Pope Francis. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the 17th of December 1936. Is the head of the Catholic Church and sovereign of the Vatican City-State. He is the first pope from the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order. The first from the Americas and the Southern Hemisphere. And the first born or raised outside Europe since the 8th century Syrian Pope Gregory III. Following the resignation of Pope Benedict XVI on the 28th of February 2013.
Ad conditionem certam perveni, viris mias, in gravescente etate, non iam aptas esse ad manus Petrinum eque administrandum.
A papal conclave elected Bergoglio as his successor on the 13th of March. He chose Francis as his papal name in honor of Saint Francis of Assisi. Throughout his public life, Francis has been noted for his humility, emphasis on God's mercy, international visibility as Pope, concern for the poor and commitment to interreligious dialogue. He is known for having a less formal approach to the papacy than his predecessors by, for instance, choosing to reside in the Domus Sanctae Marthae guesthouse rather than in the papal apartments of the Apostolic Palace used by previous popes. Francis has made women full members of dicasteries in the Roman Curia. He maintains that the Catholic Church should be more sympathetic toward members of the LGBTQ community, and has stated that while blessings of same-sex unions are not permitted, the individuals can be blessed as long as blessings are not given in a liturgical context. Francis is a critic of unbridled capitalism, consumerism, and overdevelopment. He has made action on climate change a leading focus of his papacy. He is widely interpreted as denouncing the death penalty as intrinsically evil, stating that the Catholic Church is committed to its abolition. In international diplomacy, Francis has criticized the rise of right-wing populism, called for the decriminalization of homosexuality, helped to restore full diplomatic relations between the United States and Cuba. Negotiated a deal with China to define how much influence the Communist Party has in appointing Chinese bishops. And has supported the cause of refugees. He has called on the Western world to increase immigration levels significantly. In 2022, he apologized for the Church's role in the cultural genocide of the Canadian Indigenous peoples.
Non intendo pubblicare una esortazione apostolica.
Francis convened the Synod on Synodality, which was described as the culmination of his papacy and the most important event in the Catholic Church since the Second Vatican Council. Pope Francis was born as Jorge Mario Bergoglio on 17 December 1936 in Flores, a neighborhood of Buenos Aires. He was the eldest of 5 children from Mario José Bergoglio and Regina Maria Savori. Mario Bergoglio was an Italian immigrant accountant. Regina Savori was a housewife born in Buenos Aires to a family of northern Italian origin. Mario Bergoglio's family left Italy in 1929 to escape the fascist rule of Benito Mussolini.
La dichiarazione di guerra è già stata consegnata agli ambasciatori di Gran Bretagna e di Francia.
According to Maria Elena Bergoglio, the Pope's only living sibling, the family did not emigrate for economic reasons. His other siblings were Oscar Adrian, Marta Regina, and Alberto Horacio. In the 6th grade, Bergoglio attended Wilfrid Baron de los Santos Angeles, a school of the Salesian of Don Bosco in Ramos Mejia, Buenos Aires province. He then attended the technical secondary school Escuela Técnica Industrial N27 Hipólito Yrigoyen and graduated with a chemical technician's diploma. In that capacity, he spent several years working in the food section of Hickathir Bachmann Laboratory where he worked under Esther Balestrino. Earlier, he had been a bouncer and a janitor. When he was 21 years old, after life-threatening pneumonia and 3 cysts, Bergoglio had part of a lung excised. While on his way to celebrate the spring day, Bergoglio passed by a church to go to confession and was inspired by a priest. He then studied at the Archdiocesan Seminary, Immaculada Concepción Seminary, in Villa Devoto, Buenos Aires.
Dopo la confessione ho sentito che qualcosa era cambiato. Io non ero lo stesso, avevo sentito proprio come una voce, una chiamata. Ero convinto che io dovevo diventare sacerdote.
And, after 3 years, entered the Society of Jesus as a novice on the 11th of March 1958. Bergoglio has said that, as a young seminarian, he had a crush on a girl and briefly doubted his religious career. As a Jesuit novice, he studied the humanities in Santiago, Chile. After his novitiate, Bergoglio officially became a Jesuit on the 12th of March 1960, when he made the religious profession of the initial, perpetual vows of poverty, chastity and obedience of a member of the order. In 1960, Bergoglio obtained a licentiate in philosophy from the Colegio Máximo de San Jose. He then taught literature and psychology at the Colegio de la Inmaculada Concepción, a high school in Santa Fe, from 1964 to 1965. In 1966, he taught the same courses at the Colegio del Salvador in Buenos Aires. In 1967, Bergoglio began his theological studies at Facultades de Filosofía y Teología de San Miguel. On 13 December 1969, he was ordained by Archbishop Ramón José Castellano. He served as the Master of Novices for the province there and became a professor of theology. Bergoglio completed his final stage of spiritual training as a Jesuit, tertianship, at Alcalá de Henares, Spain, and took final vows as a Jesuit, including the fourth vow of obedience to missioning by the Pope, on the 22nd of April 1973. He was named Provincial Superior of the Society of Jesus in Argentina that July for a 6-year term which ended in 1979. In 1973, he made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, but his stay was shortened by the outbreak of the Yom Kippur War. After the completion of his term of office, he was named, in 1980, the rector of the Philosophical and Theological Faculty of San Miguel where he had studied. Before taking up this new appointment, he spent the first 3 months of 1980 in Ireland to learn English, staying at the Jesuit Centre at the Milltown Institute of Theology and Philosophy, Dublin. He then served at San Miguel for 6 years until 1986 when, at the discretion of Jesuit Superior General Peter Hans Kolvenbach, he was replaced by someone more in tune with the worldwide trend in the Society of Jesus toward emphasizing social justice rather than his emphasis on popular religiosity and direct pastoral work. Bergoglio then spent several months at the St. Georgen Graduate School of Philosophy and Theology in Frankfurt, Germany, and considered possible dissertation topics. He settled on exploring the work of the German-Italian theologian Romano Guardini, particularly his study of contrast, published in his 1925 work Der Gegensatz.
Sono convinto che Guardini sia un pensatore che ha molto da dire agli uomini di nostro tempo e non solo ai cristiani. Con la vostra fondazione voi state realizzando questo progetto, facendo entrare il pensiero di Guardini in un dialogo polifonico con gli ambiti della politica, della cultura, della scienza di ogni giorno. Auspico vivamente che questo impegno abbia buon successo.
He returned to Argentina earlier than expected to serve as a confessor and spiritual director to the Jesuit community in Córdoba. As a student at the Salesian school, Bergoglio was mentored by Ukrainian Greek Catholic priest Stefan Czizimil. Bergoglio often rose hours before his classmates to serve divine liturgy for Czizimil. In 1992, Jesuit authorities asked Bergoglio not to live in Jesuit residences due to ongoing tensions with leaders and scholars. Concerns about his dissent, views on Catholic orthodoxy, and opposition to liberation theology, and his role as auxiliary bishop of Buenos Aires. As a bishop, he was no longer subject to his Jesuit superior. From then on, he no longer visited Jesuit houses and was in virtual estrangement from the Jesuits until after his election as pope. Bergoglio was named Auxiliary Bishop of Buenos Aires in 1992 and was consecrated on the 27th of June 1992 as titular Bishop of Jaca, with Cardinal Antonio Quercino, Archbishop of Buenos Aires, serving as principal consecrator. He chose his episcopal motto to be Miserando atqui elegendo, drawn from St. Bede's homily on Matthew chapter 9 verses 9 to 13, because he saw him through the eyes of mercy and chose him. On the 3rd of June 1997, Bergoglio was appointed coadjutor Archbishop of Buenos Aires, after which he became Metropolitan Archbishop after Quercino's death on the 28th of February 1998. As Archbishop, he established new parishes, restructured the archdiocese, led pro-life efforts, and formed a commission on divorces. One of Bergoglio's major initiatives as Archbishop was to increase the Church's presence in the shantytown, Villa Miseria, or just Villa, slums of Buenos Aires. Under his leadership, the number of priests assigned to work in the shantytowns doubled, and he visited them himself. This work led to him being referred to as the Valero Bishop, sometimes translated as the Slum Bishop. Tenure as Archbishop, Bergoglio sold the archdiocese's bank shares and moved its accounts to regular international banks. This ended the Church's high spending habits, which had nearly led to bankruptcy, and enforced stricter fiscal discipline. On the 6th of November 1998, while remaining Archbishop of Buenos Aires, Bergoglio was named ordinary for Eastern Catholics in Argentina, who lacked a prelate of their own church. On Bergoglio's election to the papacy, Major Archbishop Sviatoslav Shevchuk said that Bergoglio understood the liturgy, rites, and spirituality of Shevchuk's Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, and always took care of our church in Argentina, as ordinary. In 2000, Bergoglio was the only church official to reconcile with Geronimo Podesta, a former bishop who had been suspended as a priest after opposing the Argentine Revolution military dictatorship in 1972. He also defended Podesta's wife from Vatican attacks on their marriage. That same year, Bergoglio said the Argentine Catholic Church needed to put on garments of public penance for the sins committed during the years of the dictatorship in the 1970s, during the Dirty War. Bergoglio regularly celebrated the Holy Thursday foot washing ritual in jails, hospitals, retirement homes, and slums. Bergoglio continued to be the Archbishop of Buenos Aires after his elevation to the cardinalate in 2001. In 2007, shortly after Benedict XVI introduced new rules for pre-Vatican II liturgical forms, Bergoglio established a weekly Mass in this extraordinary form of the Roman Rite. On the 8th of November 2005, Bergoglio was elected president of the Argentine Episcopal Conference for a 3-year term, 2005 to 2008, and re-elected on the 11th of November 2008. He remained a member of that commission's permanent governing body, the president of its Committee for the Pontifical Catholic University of Argentina, and a member of its Liturgy Committee for the Care of Shrines. While head of the Argentine Catholic Bishops' Conference, Bergoglio issued a collective apology for his church's failure to protect people from the junta during the Dirty War. When he turned 75 in December 2011, Bergoglio submitted his resignation as Archbishop of Buenos Aires to Pope Benedict XVI as required by canon law. As he had no coadjutor archbishop, he stayed in office, waiting for the Vatican to appoint a replacement. On the 21st of February 2001, Pope John Paul II made Archbishop Bergoglio a cardinal, assigning him the title of Cardinal Priest of San Roberto Bellarmino. Bergoglio was installed there on the 14th of October.
Join me in glad adoration.
During his trip to Rome for the ceremony, he and his sister Maria Elena visited their father's hometown in northern Italy.
Praise to the Lord above all things, so wondrously reigning, sheltering you under His wings, and so gently
As cardinal, Bergoglio was appointed to 5 administrative positions in the Roman Curia. He was a member of the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments, the Congregation for the Clergy, the Congregation for Institutes of Consecrated Life and Societies of Apostolic Life, the Pontifical Council for the Family, and the Commission for Latin America. Later that year, when Cardinal Edward Egan returned to New York following the September 11 attacks, Bergoglio replaced him as relator, recording secretary, in the Synod of Bishops, and, according to the Catholic Herald, created a favorable impression as a man open to communion and dialogue. Cardinal Bergoglio was known for his personal humility, doctrinal conservatism, and commitment to social justice. His simple lifestyle, including living in a small apartment rather than the elegant bishop's residence, using public transportation, and cooking his own meals, enhanced his reputation for humility. He limited his time in Rome to lightning visits. After Pope John Paul II died on 2 April 2005, Bergoglio attended his funeral and was considered one of the papabile for succession to the papacy. He participated as a cardinal elector in the 2005 papal conclave that elected Pope Benedict XVI.
Dopo il grande Papa Giovanni Paolo II, i signori cardinali hanno eletto me, un semplice, umile lavoratore nella vigna del Signore.
In the National Catholic Reporter, John L. Allen Jr. reported that Bergoglio was a frontrunner in the 2005 conclave. In September 2005, the Italian magazine Limes published claims that Bergoglio had been the runner-up and main challenger to Cardinal Ratzinger at that conclave, and that he had received 40 votes in the third ballot but fell back to 26 at the fourth and decisive ballot. The claims were based on a diary purportedly belonging to an anonymous cardinal who had been present at the conclave. According to the Italian journalist Andrea Tornielli, this number of votes had no precedent for a Latin American papabile. La Stampa reported that Bergoglio was in close contention with Ratzinger during the election until he made an emotional plea that the cardinals should not vote for him. According to Tornielli, Bergoglio made this request to prevent the conclave from delaying too much in the election of a pope. As a cardinal, Bergoglio was associated with Communion and Liberation, a Catholic evangelical lay movement of the type known as Associations of the Faithful.
In riferimento all'eredità che vi ha lasciato Don Giussani, non può ridursi a un museo dei ricordi, di decisioni prese, di norme di condotta. Comporta invece certamente fedeltà alla tradizione, ma fedeltà alla tradizione, diceva Mahler, significa tenere vivo il fuoco e non adorare le ceneri. Ricordate che il centro non è il carisma, il centro è uno solo, Gesù. Gesù.
He sometimes made appearances at the annual gathering known as the Rimini meeting held during the late summer months in Italy. In 2005, Cardinal Bergoglio authorized the request for beatification, the third step toward sainthood, for 6 members of the Palatine community murdered in the San Patricio Church massacre. Bergoglio also ordered an investigation into the murders. 1984 testimony indicated that they were perpetrated by members of the Argentine Navy on the orders of Rear Admiral Rubian Chamorro.
Bergoglio was the subject of allegations regarding the Argentine Navy's kidnapping of two Jesuit priests, Orlando Yorio and Franz Jalix, in 1976, during Argentina's Dirty War. He feared for the priests' safety and had tried to change their work prior to their arrest. Contrary to reports, he did not try to throw them out of the Jesuit order. In 2005, Miriam Bredman, a human rights lawyer, filed a criminal complaint against Bergoglio, as superior in the Society of Jesus of Argentina, accusing him of involvement in the kidnapping. The complaint was dismissed. The priests were tortured but were found alive 5 months later. Yorio accused Bergoglio of effectively handing them over to the death squads, by declining to tell the authorities that he endorsed their work. Yorio said in a 1999 interview that he believed that Bergoglio did nothing to free us, in fact, just the opposite. Two days after the election of Francis, Jalix issued a statement confirming the kidnapping and attributing the cause to a former lay colleague who became a guerrilla, was captured, then named Yorio and Jalix when interrogated. The following week, Jalix issued a second, clarifying statement. It is wrong to assert that our capture took place at the initiative of Father Bergoglio. Orlando Yorio and I were not denounced by Father Bergoglio. Bergoglio told his authorized biographer, Sergio Rubin, that he worked behind the scenes for the priest's release. Bergoglio's intercession with dictator Jorge Rafael Videla on their behalf may have saved their lives. Bergoglio also told Rubin that he had often sheltered people from the dictatorship on church property, and once gave his own identity papers to a man who looked like him so that he could flee Argentina. The interview with Rubin, reflected in the biography El Jesuita, is the only time Bergoglio has spoken to the press about those events. Alicia Oliveira, a former Argentine judge, also reported that Bergoglio helped people flee Argentina during the rule of the junta. Since Francis became Pope, Gonzalo Mosca and Jose Carabias have related accounts to journalists of how Bergoglio helped them flee the dictatorship. Oliveira described Bergoglio as anguished and very critical of the dictatorship during the Dirty War. Oliveira met with him at the time and urged Bergoglio to speak out. He told her that he couldn't, that it wasn't an easy thing to do. Artist and human rights activist Adolfo Pérez Esquivel, the 1980 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, said,
"Perhaps he didn't have the courage of other priests, but he never collaborated with the dictatorship. Bergoglio was no accomplice of the dictatorship."
Graciela Fernandez Meidide, member of the Permanent Assembly for Human Rights, and also said that there was no proof linking Bergoglio with the dictatorship. She told the Clarin newspaper, "There is no information and justice couldn't prove it. I was in the APDH during all the dictatorship years. and I received hundreds of testimonies. Bergoglio was never mentioned. It was the same in the CONADEP. Nobody mentioned him as instigator or as anything. Riccardo Lorenzetti, the president of the Argentine Supreme Court, said that Bergoglio is completely innocent of the accusations. Historian Uki Goni pointed that during early 1976, the military junta still had a good image among society, and that the scale of the political repression was not known until much later. Bergoglio would have had little reason to suspect that the detention of Iorio and Yalix could end in their deaths. When Bergoglio became Pope, Naming Boiedo, he a photograph of a priest whose face is not visible, giving the sacramental bread to dictator Jorge Rafael Videla, circulated and was alleged to be of Bergoglio. But it was later found that the photograph was of a different priest. When Bergoglio celebrated Mass at the cathedral for the 2004 first national government holiday, President Nestor Kirchner attended and heard Bergoglio request more political dialogue. The rejection of intolerance and the criticism of exhibitionism and strident announcements. Kirchner celebrated the National Day elsewhere the following year, and the Mass in the cathedral was suspended. In 2006, Bergoglio helped the fellow Jesuit Joaquim Pina win the elections in the Misiones province and prevent an amendment of the local constitution that would allow indefinite re-elections. Kirchner intended to use that project to start similar amendments at other provinces and eventually implement it in the national constitution. Kirchner considered Bergoglio as a political rival until he died in 2010. Bergoglio's relations with Kirchner's widow and successor, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, have been similarly tense. In 2008, Bergoglio called for national reconciliation during disturbances in the country's agricultural regions, which the government interpreted as a support for anti-government demonstrators. The campaign to enact same-sex marriage legislation was a particularly tense period in their relations. When Bergoglio was elected Pope, initial reactions were mixed. Most of the Argentine society cheered it. But the pro-government newspaper Pagina 12 published renewed allegations about the dirty war, and the president of the National Library described a global conspiracy theory. The president took more than an hour before congratulating the new pope, and did so only in a passing reference within a routine speech. Due to the Pope's popularity in Argentina, Christina Kirchner made what the political analyst Claudio Fantini called a Copernican shift in her relations with him and fully embraced the Francis phenomenon. On the day before his inauguration as Pope, Bergoglio, now Francis, had a private meeting with Kirchner where they exchanged gifts and lunched together. This was the new Pope's first meeting with a head of state, and there was speculation that the two were mending their relations. Pagina 12 then removed their controversial articles about Bergoglio from their webpage as a result of this change.
Bueno, primero porque el Papa juega políticamente. Es decir, es un Papa donde tiene fuerte injerencia política. Ha demostrado además una gran afinidad con dictadores como Castro o como con Maduro. Es decir, está del lado de dictaduras sangrientas. Tiene afinidad por los comunistas asesinos.
El Papa, sí, lo voy a decir de frente, es el representante del maligno en la tierra, ocupando el trono de la casa de Dios, que el Papa impulsa el comunismo, con todos los desastres que causó.
Before Javier Milei's election to the Argentine presidency, he was very critical of Francis, describing him as imbecile and a communist turd. His disparaging comments sparked controversy among Catholics. However, following his inauguration, Milei softened his position and formally invited Francis to Argentina. Milei visited the Vatican on the 11th of February 2024. The day Francis canonized Maria Antonia de Paz y Figueroa, the first female Argentine saint.
Beatam Mariam Antoniam a Santo Joseph de Paz y Figueroa, Santam esse decernimus e definimus, a Santorum catalogo adscribendum, statuentis eos in universa ecclesia, inter santos pia devotionem recoli devere.
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum, habemus papam, eminentissimum ac reverendissimum Dominum Georgium Marium, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae Cardinalem Bergoglio, qui sibi nomen imposuit Franciscum.
Voi sapete che Il dovere del conclave era di dare un vescovo a Roma. Sembra che i miei fratelli cardinali sono andati a prenderlo quasi alla fine del mondo, ma siamo qui.
Francis is the first Jesuit pope. This was a significant appointment because of the sometimes tense relations between the Society of Jesus and the Holy See. He is also the first from the Americas and the first from the Southern Hemisphere. Many media reported him as being the first non-European pope, but he is the 11th. The previous was Gregory III from Syria, who died in 741. Although Francis was not born in Europe, he is ethnically European. His father and maternal grandparents were from northern Italy. As Pope, Francis's manner is less formal than that of his immediate predecessors, a style that news coverage has referred to as no frills, noting that it is his common touch and accessibility that is proving the greatest inspiration. On the night of his election, he took a bus back to his hotel with the cardinals rather than being driven in the papal car. The next day, he visited Cardinal Jorge Maria Mejia in the hospital and chatted with patients and staff. In addition to his native Spanish, he speaks fluent Italian, the official language of Vatican City and the everyday language of the Holy See, and German. He's also conversant in Latin, the official language of the Holy See, French, Portuguese, and English. He also understands Piedmontese and some Genoese Ligurian. Francis chose not to live in the official papal residence in the Apostolic Palace, but instead remains in the Vatican guest house, in a suite in which he can receive visitors and hold meetings. He is the first pope since Pope Pius X to live outside the papal apartments. Francis still appears at the window of the Apostolic Palace for the Sunday Angelus. As a Jesuit pope, Francis has been making clear that a fundamental task of the faithful is not so much to follow rules, but to discern what God is calling them to do. He has been altering the culture of the clergy, steering away from what he has named as clericalism, which dwells on priestly status and authority, and toward an ethic of service. Francis says the Church's shepherds must have the smell of the sheep, always staying close to the people of God.